Hello, everyone. This is Parrish Alford with the Daily Journal. I'm joined by Logan Lowery, our Mississippi State beat writer, and this is Double Coverage, a production of the Daily Journal. We're going to talk all things Mississippi State and Ole Miss for the next half hour or so. Logan, including a little courtroom drama with the Rebel Rags case. That the whole NCAA thing just never seems to go away. But the last remnant here for Ole Miss involves the Rebel Rags defamation lawsuit, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we get going. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Tell you what, Parrish, since we did our last podcast, I think it was last Thursday that we recorded this, I've been treated to 4 really, really good basketball games that kind of went down to the wire, and just fun games to watch, much less cover and write about. So, some exciting times in Mississippi State men's and women's basketball the last week or so.
Yeah, I watched the end of State's women against South Carolina last night, and so that was quite a big finish, a big win for the Bulldogs there. We'll talk about that in just a moment. I did want to touch on the Rebel Rags case a little bit, not because I think it's a great story, but it is interesting. It is different, and I know a lot of people are really following this closely, as evidenced by our hits on the web after I posted a few notes yesterday. Logan, I stopped by the courthouse on the square before I went over to basketball interviews, and it was an interesting scene. I've been around the square for many years, but had not been in the courthouse for anything, and they moved this hearing up to the second floor courtroom, and you go in, and of course there are about 25 people there, and they're all people who follow Ole Miss, and it's like a wedding, like one side's the groom and one side's the bride. This one side of the courtroom is like completely empty. This other side has about 25 people, and they're all sitting behind Charles Merkel, who is the attorney representing Ole Miss. So it's clearly the Ole Miss side and the Mississippi State side, and State wins in a number of attorneys. There were 6-2, but there were more people being represented on that side, with Leo Lewis and Kobe Jones, and of course the NCAA is mixed in there too. They had filed a motion to dismiss, and it was their attorney who was kind of the spokesman for the group. But interesting setting there, nice old courthouse, and I sat up there and I kept thinking, Logan, is this where the trial of Carl Lee Haley took place? And
that was in Canton.
That was in. I know it was in Canton. I know it was a fictional town, but I know kind of where that was built. So you read the book? You read?
No, I have the movie. The movie.
Okay.
Yeah, it actually was filmed in Canton. So everything. Yeah, I recognize that. In fact, when I drive around the Canton Square there, every time I pass through there, I think about that movie, A Time to Kill. Great movie, Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, and it was a great book, and really, I think one of John Grisham's better works, maybe his best, his very first there. But I really like Grisham when he gets into that subject matter with the Old South and whatnot. So that was very interesting, and it was good to be there and witness the proceedings. And by all indications, the case will move forward with Rebel Rags charging defamation. The Oxford retail outlet that specializes in Ole Miss merchandise, charging defamation because they contended that they did not provide free merchandise to Leo Lewis, Kobe Jones, and Lindsey Miller, the stepfather of former Ole Miss tackle Laramie Tunsil. So anyway, that's going on right now. Judge John Kelly Luther did not agree with the NCAA's attorney, Doug Minor, who argued that this case did not rise to the level to rise to the legal standard of defamation. But the judge ruled that should the case proceed, if it were to proceed, that a jury could very well find defamation. So we'll see. So bottom line is there are some motions on the table regarding discovery. which is the interesting part because that's where everybody's business comes out in public. But very good chance that discovery will happen, that the case will proceed, but those motions are still under advisement there at this moment. But it's looking like the case will proceed, and we'll proceed with discovery. And Logan, here's the thing with that. Sometimes when you get into these court cases, you might find what you're looking for, but you might find, things that you don't want to become public as well. And, the Mississippi State side of this, these attorneys are going to dig around and, look, it was a similar situation that uncovered Hugh Freeze and phone records and a phone call or phone calls to an escort service that resulted in him being fired as Ole Miss football coach in the summer of 17 there in July. That doesn't come about, we're told, unless it's that situation. The university at that time, the administration was standing behind Hugh Freeze in terms of the NCAA investigation. They felt like he had done what he needed to do with regard to the investigation, but it was the phone calls that led to his firing. So, as one legal guy put it to me, look, this goes forward. Those attorneys are going to dig around, and they may come up with other things in Ole Miss recruiting. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But that's a consideration as you move forward in something like this. This is unique.
Yeah, and and that may, turn into more, but just the whole basis of this lawsuit is about the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I can't believe it's actually made it this far in the legal process. I mean, as far defamation, all I would do, and like I said, I have no legal training or anything like that, but defamation, look, all I would do is look at the dude's bank records. If he's made more money this year after all that came out, and if he lost money, hey, you might have a case. But if the dude's made money, hey, I'd just throw that thing out and move on about my day. I mean, they're dragging this thing out. I mean, the fact of the matter is, neither school has the same coaching staff that it had when all this mess started. You're going to be punishing folks that aren't there anymore. And what pisses me off about the thing is it is affecting my job because I can't speak to Leo Lewis. Now, they have let Kobe Jones speak twice this year, and he was off limits all of last year. And I've spoke to him twice, but we could not ask anything about legal stuff. It had to be football only type questions to him. And Leo Lewis is unavailable per se, and that's a starting linebacker. Kobe Jones is going to be a starting defensive end for Mississippi State next season. So it's affecting my job. I can't do my job as the misquarter because of all this crap going on.
So why the distinction there? Why is Kobe Jones available even just twice and Leo Lewis is not?
I'll take what I can get. Like I said, they told us that we could talk to Kobe, if it would be just football only type questions. So, we did what we had to do to speak to Kobe Jones, at all. It was either that or nothing. So, that's just kind of the way it is.
Well, you know what? You're right in that the coaching staffs are different, and this could end up with, a lot of people getting hurt, players and whatnot within the program that didn't have anything to do with this. But, that's usually how investigations work. And this is, like I said, a remnant of that NCAA investigation. But you know what? Logan, you mentioned that it could affect a lot of people in the program, but it's being pushed by people who are outside the program. That's that's kind of how these things work. And I've always said a football program, college football is a multi-million-dollar business, and you can hear an AD or even a chancellor or coach. You can say, well, we're not going to do XXX as long as I'm here or as long as I'm leading this program. Look, there are too many people involved outside the program who have influence. It's never about one person leading the program. I can remember years ago when I was covering Mississippi State, Larry Templeton made a similar comment to me. Well, I know who the CEO of Mississippi State Athletics is, I'm paraphrasing there. Look, in the modern day of college athletics, when all of these nice stadiums are on campus and all of these amenities that we see, the cabanas at Mississippi State, the new bowled-in end zone at Ole Miss, used to be, Logan, that the facility, the stadium at Tennessee or Alabama or other places was a big recruiting tool. These stadiums at State and Ole Miss right now are just as nice. They're among the nicest in the conference, and they'll get nicer because they'll continue to be updated. Well, how do you make those changes? You do that with private contributions. And as generous as some people are, most people aren't contributing hundreds of thousands, a million, maybe, whatever the big figure might be. Most people are not contributing that kind of money without the expectation of something in return. And that something is access. That something is the ability to be around the program, to know what's going on, and ultimately, to have a say in decisions. I think that's a very real thing in modern college athletics. So the idea that it's just one person running the program, I don't think that's the way it is anymore. So anyway, that's our hot take on Rebel Rags. Logan, you got anything to finish up with?
No, I'm good. Like I said, I've been over that case for a couple of years now. I'm just ready for it to be put to bed. And like I said, I would have thrown it out a long time ago. It really just doesn't have a whole lot of basis. And I will add this, I used to work in recruiting, and I did that for 5 years. And I actually saw some stuff from this case, some screenshots and some different stuff from actual high school coaches who attended Mississippi State, played football for Mississippi State, and the picture that I saw was holding up a pair of Ole Miss shorts and said, "Where do you think I got these?" So like I said, I don't know for a fact it happened, but I've seen enough stuff to gather me, that actually took place. And like I said, I don't think this lawsuit has any basis.
All right, shifting gears, let's talk basketball a little bit. It's been pretty good week at both places. Mississippi State rebounding from the loss to Ole Miss. We'll talk about that. First, Logan, I wanted to back up a little bit to that State and Ole Miss game, 81-77. It was the last in a 10-game win streak for Ole Miss, and really, kind of the crowning achievement, I guess, in the Rebels' early SEC start. Now, they lost 83-69 at home Tuesday night to LSU, who offer some different physical challenges with their length and athleticism. But basically, Ole Miss just vaulted into the national consciousness after its win at Mississippi State. That was its second top 15 ranked win last week, winning against Auburn at home. The Tigers were number 8 then, and State was number 14 when Ole Miss won there last Saturday. And 10 straight wins, Logan. It's just a situation that was not expected for Ole Miss this year. And when I considered Ole Miss basketball in the offseason, I thought, well, you know what? They're going to have a good coach. Kermit Davis is going to come in there, and chances are he's going to reconnect with some of those players. I really could see them being better than people are giving them credit for right now. But I don't think the preseason predictions for this group were off the mark. I mean, last in the SEC is where you put the team that was last a year ago, that went just 12-20, went 5-13 in the conference and fired his coach, and then had some attrition with some players graduating, that sort of thing. Last place is where that team is usually predicted. I thought they would be a little bit better than that. Turns out they have been better for a number of reasons, most of which I think has been these upperclassmen guards just buying in and really being coachable. Okay, so now coming off the Mississippi State win, they lose 83-69 against LSU, which LSU was 12-3 going in, had a good record, had lost to some good teams, but physically, Logan, they're just different than what Ole Miss had faced against Auburn or Mississippi State, and different in the sense that while I think Auburn and State have an athletic player at the 5, LSU's athletic player at the 5 was better. in Cavell Bigby Williams, a graduate transfer from Oregon. 6'11", anyway, very athletic. But the real difference for LSU is that they had two of those guys. And when you had two guys of that length blocking shots and altering shots, that really affected Ole Miss's game in the paint, which was somewhere they had been very successful during their 10-game win streak. So you had a little bit of that going on. And, Ole Miss didn't shoot well in the first half, but managed to get to halftime after leading most of the first half at 31-31, but just kind of came unraveled a little bit when they didn't score and went through some droughts there in the second half, and LSU was able to pull away. LSU got a lot of hands in the lane, guarded hard, tipped passes when Ole Miss put the ball on the floor. But the biggest thing, I think, was the fact that they had two of those really long and lean athletic players altering shots. And, Ole Miss was able to mask some post deficiencies against Auburn and against State to a degree. I don't think Abdul Adu is as athletic, is as polished in the post as what LSU had to offer, and that was a big difference for the Rebels. So now Ole Miss faces some adversity, has to come off a loss for the first time since Thanksgiving break, since that Cincinnati game down in Destin. So they'll take on an Arkansas team Saturday at noon that will be athletic, but again, doesn't have two big 6'10s in the post. We'll have one. So we'll see what that does for this game, how Ole Miss responds. And they've got a little more adversity this week as well, in the sense that Devontae Shuler, their starting point guard, who is number 3 in the SEC in minutes played, is dealing with a stress fracture in his foot. So he probably will play against Arkansas. He may have his minutes limited. We'll see. It'll all be about the pain tolerance for Devontae Shuler, but it will be interesting to watch Kermit Davis and this team coming off a loss in the SEC for the first time.
Yeah, for Mississippi State, they finally got their first SEC win on Tuesday against Florida. Had to go down to the wire once again to get it, but Mississippi State lost their first two games to South Carolina, lost in overtime by 5, and then they lose again to Ole Miss at home by 4. Both those games went down to the wire. Like I said, went into overtime against South Carolina, and then I think the game-winning basket was scored with 50 seconds left to go against Ole Miss. And kind of the key in those two games was just the 4-man. Mississippi State's defense against the power forward for the other team. Kosar for South Carolina has a career high, and then turn around with Blake Henson for Ole Miss. He turned around and has a career high. So if they hold those two players just their average, if they just hold them to their average, they win both of those ball games. But Mississippi State played well in those games. They just came up a little bit short, and took on a Florida team who's kind of had a rough start to SEC play as well. Took them on Tuesday. It went down to the wire once again, and Quindary Weatherspoon kind of drove the length of the court and scored a layup and got fouled with less than 4 seconds to go. I think it was like 3-point-something seconds left in that game. He hits the free throw, creates a little bit of separation right there towards the end, and Mississippi State's able to hold on to get their first win. And the bad thing with Mississippi State starting with that 0-2 start to conference play is the fact that now they're looking at a stretch of 4 of their next 5 games are on the road. So they didn't do themselves any favors by losing 2 tight games early on, staring all these road games in the face. Now they go to Vanderbilt on Saturday, and then they go up to Rupp on Tuesday to play Kentucky. So not a good stretch for Mississippi State. They got a game with Ole Miss and Oxford still thrown in the mix there in that 5-game stretch. So State's got some tough games ahead. So like I said, losing those tight games early on did not help them in any way, shape, or form. But, State's still a good basketball team. They've only lost 3 games all year. They've all been close games. So I think night in and night out, Mississippi State has an opportunity to beat anybody at this point, but they also have the opportunity to lose to anybody at this point. They don't really, I think this league is so good. So, Mississippi State, has played well at home. I said the Ole Miss game is the first home game they've lost all year. And I believe Ole Miss has played well at home too. the LSU game was the first home loss this year, right, Parrish?
It was their first home loss. And, Logan, I'm really interested to see this Vanderbilt and Mississippi State matchup because Vanderbilt is 0-4. You talked about the difficulty that State would have faced with an 0-3 start. They were able to avoid that. Vanderbilt has not been getting blown out. They were 9-3, had a nice non-conference win against Arizona State. But they've not been able to close close games in the conference. One of those was against Ole Miss. The Rebels pulling away and winning there in Nashville. Traditionally, that's not an easy place to play there at Memorial Gym. This is a Vanderbilt team that's built a little differently, Logan. They've got a couple of guys who can step back and really shoot the three, but they're not built that way in the sense that you think of the traditional Vanderbilt teams. Very athletic with Saban Lee at point guard. And, they've got a freshman in the middle at 6'10" who is really, moves well and plays well defensively down there as also. So, I'm going to be interested to see how that game turns because, as you say, State's got a difficult road schedule coming up in the next couple of weeks. And Vanderbilt, they're just trying to get off the mat and get a win in the conference.
Yeah. And switching over kind of to the women's game, Mississippi State had a really big game last night against South Carolina. Mississippi State ranked 7th, South Carolina ranked 15th, both of them 4-0 in the conference play. So, they were the last two remaining undefeated teams in the conference on the women's side. And, 10,000 plus packed into Mississippi State. I think it was 10,006. It was the sixth largest crowd in Mississippi State basketball history, men or women. So another huge crowd for Mississippi State women. They, went into the third quarter. It was a 1-point ball game going into the fourth quarter. So, South Carolina were shooting threes like crazy. I mean, they made their first 6 3-pointers. They were 6 of 6 from behind the arc to start that ball game. And Mississippi State dominated the glass in that game. Mississippi State won the battle of the glass 49-24 in that game. And usually when you see that type of desperation with the rebounding, just you would think one team would dominate the other, but South Carolina was able to hit the three ball so well that they were able to keep themselves in the ball game. But Tierra McCowan had a huge game, 26 points and 24 rebounds in that game. And Mississippi State did that without Chloe Bibby, their starting power forward. She goes down with a knee injury. I'm assuming it's a knee injury on the opening possession of that ball game. She's out. Don't know exactly how long she's going to be out, but it looked really bad. Mississippi State was able to get some key minutes from Bre'Amber Scott during that game. And, it was just a huge effort, 20 points out of Jordan Danbury. So the job that Mississippi State did in the absence of Chloe Bibby was really impressive. And they may have to do that moving forward, depending on her prognosis.
Well, I'll tell you what, Logan, Ole Miss obviously got the nice road win, the men, against State last Saturday. And the next day, a shocker, the Ole Miss women pull off a win against a ranked opponent on the road at number 16 Kentucky. So the first win for Yolette McPhee-McEwen. And, this is really such an odd year for that program, Logan, because, you see coaching changes often and you will see attrition. You will see players leave the program. Players are unhappy with this or that, whatnot. Never seen as much attrition as moving from Matt Insel to Yolette McPhee-McEwen, and in a team that already was not very talented and went just 1-15 in the SEC regular season last year. So anyway, it's a bunch of transfers, a lot of inexperienced players, but they've gotten consistent scoring from Crystal Allen, the graduate transfer guard from Texas Arlington, who has really been the Rebels' best player, hitting about 15 a game. But for them to pull off that kind of win was really good to see. And, this season is about just kind of, coming together and really seeing who you can attract to the program next year and really begin, I think, next year, the building process for Yolette McPhee-McEwen. So we'll see how that goes. But, I'm assuming that you were pretty surprised to see that final score, huh?
I was, and I actually covered the Mississippi State Kentucky game, and Kentucky was ranked at the time. It was actually a big game, big matchup early on in conference play for Mississippi State, and Macy Morris is so good for Kentucky, or has been over the years. So Kentucky's got some experience. Matthew Mitchell has done a really good job at Kentucky with them, and Mississippi State kind of blew them out, which was kind of surprising too. I expected a much closer game between Mississippi State and Kentucky, and like I said, I know the talent that Kentucky has, and to see Ole Miss do what they did is kind of feather in the cap. Of Yolette McPhee.
Get there, get it.
Yolette McPhee McEwen.
You got it, man.
Hey, all right.
There, but big win for the Rebels. They had not been closer than 13 points to their earlier SEC opponents, and most of those games were much more lopsided than that. But they had gotten to within 13 of LSU. And the Ole Miss women now at 7-11 are back at home Sunday against Florida. Maybe they'll have a shot in that game as well. So anyway, we'll see. Folks, that's it for this edition of Double Coverage, a production of the Daily Journal. We thank you for clicking in with us today. Come back and join us next week.